Welcome to the Art of Life podcast. Not only is it the last Art of Life podcast of 2024, it is the last Art of Life podcast. Now, that's exciting news. So, I am not actually stopping podcasting. I really do enjoy it, and I find a lot of creative freedom from it. And I think I'm helping the world. The feedback I've gotten from a few of you has been incredible. But what I am doing is changing the name, the cover, because Art of Life, I named it that because I believe life is the ultimate piece of art that we create. And we're all working in tangent with each other to create this thing, right? Humanity's so good at creating. And the ultimate piece of art we leave behind is the memories and lessons and things that the impact on the people around us and the world around us. Now, it's such a good name that I'm not the first one to think of it. So the feedback I've gotten is it's hard to find. It's hard to find on wherever you catch your podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. There's so many podcasts with similar names that it becomes difficult to find. And so we're just rebranding under the name Koi Fish Profit Podcast. It amalgamates everything. If you're watching on video on YouTube, you can see I always have hella koi fish in the background. I got a koi fish tattooed on me. The koi is a story about never giving up. And so it ties in as well. Quick little segue. The reason I got a koi tattoo is kois are the origin of the dragons, right? Mythology wise, koi would swim up the Yellow River every year, and it's against the current. And at the end of this Yellow River, there was the Yellow Mountain, and there was a giant waterfall. And they would try and swim up this waterfall, and they would fall and make noise, and that would attract demons who loved to watch the suffering. So they make it taller and taller. And every century or so, only one koi would make it to the top of the waterfall. And it would leap up at the top of the mountain. There was said to be a golden gate. And as it leapt over the golden gate, it would get struck by lightning and grow a dragon's body. Now, the dragon is about what you become through the process. And then the dragon would travel the imperial lands, protecting it, searching for pearls of wisdom. So based on my life story, I just always related to the koi. And I think most of us do. Most of us know the adversity of life. Most of us know that going against the flow can be really powerful. And to make it through, one in a million, right? You got to capitalize on luck, but luck is what you capitalize on after a shit ton of hard work. And so the next podcast I release in a week or two will be under the name Koi Fish Profit Podcast. On that note, let's get the episode started. I've done this episode last year and I'm doing it again. And I just re-listened to that episode, so it's really interesting to see how much changes. The days are long, but the years are short. The best lessons of 2024, right? I spent a quarter of this year basically hospitalized and or bedridden, and the other 3 quarters, or at least 2 quarters, recovering. I'm still actively recovering. I'm still dealing with a lot of the symptoms of the medication and the fungal infection and all that. But I was so attached to 2024 being my big break year, which when I look back, I'm like, what does that even mean? And I kind of know what it means to myself, but gotta love the journey. And as difficult as this year was, it was a big break year. So much change, so much growth, both professionally and personally. And what happened for me. And that's cool. And I delayed a bunch of projects and goals for another year. And that's okay. I will still remember 2024 as the fungus year and a big break year as well. And I think that's the first lesson of the year is like, don't be attached to the outcomes, right? Pursue the outcomes and don't make assumptions of what it's going to look like. And in the pursuit of the assumption and the hard work, it'll turn into something. It just might not be exactly what you think it'll be. And it could still be a really good thing. Like if you're so focused on like, I didn't achieve what I thought I was going to achieve. When I took a second to reflect back, I'm like, well, I still achieved things that were important to me, right? That's a practice. I recommend everyone do this at the end of a year, the beginning of a year. I go through my whole camera roll and I journal and I write about each month and what I did during that month and what I learned that month and what my challenges were that month. And I'll go through back my old journal entries for the year and remember like, oh man, I forgot. Like that's how I was feeling. I was so hopeless or I was so excited or and each month this year had its own challenges and victories and celebrations. So it was really interesting. And let's get into it, right? Other than not being attached to outcomes, I think what I learned this year is being busy and being productive are not the same things. And the best analogy I can give to you is if I hire you to cut 100 lawns and I give you scissors and you go and do it, You're busy as hell, and you probably won't cut 100. You might cut 10. Busyness doesn't translate to productivity. Busyness doesn't mean you're being productive. A lot of times it's wasted time. Don't cut grass with scissors. And how I learned about this was, I recommend everyone does this exercise. I did a time journal, the same way I did a food journal when I was trying to lose weight or gain weight, whatever your goal is. So I set a timer. You can do 30 minutes. I did a 20-minute interval. Every 20 minutes, a timer will go off, and then I would write down what I did. And then you realize, like, time is more valuable than money. Time can turn into money, and time can be with loved ones. Time can be spent however you want. But when you're spending it aimlessly, you don't know where it's going. You're losing it. You're actively losing it, and you can't get more of it. That was a really powerful tool. And the reason I did it originally was to kind of understand, as an entrepreneur and a business owner, you calculate the amount of hours you worked in a week once you do all that, and then you calculate what you made that week and divide it by that to figure out your hourly wage. And the lesson there is to outsource, like hire someone to do the things that they can do, work on the business, not in the business. But I thought it was very relevant for those that aren't entrepreneurs, right? How much of your time is going, the cliche one, scrolling, but how much time is you going staring into space? How much time is going doing God knows what? So I think it's valuable, and it's not about just being a high performer. If you're enjoying yourself, that's great. But if you're finding yourself having not enough time to do things you want to do, maybe do a time audit or a time journal. The one of the biggest things, again, I learned this year was most of my suffering was myself. Most of my suffering was not the feelings I felt, but the judgment of those feelings. It was the thoughts, right? The old school nickname, the sensitive sensei. I hated being sensitive up until my 30s. I hated being sensitive. It's only now that I see sensitivity is a superpower. Yeah, I didn't believe it. I see it now because, right, we broke down the word self-consciousness in a prior episode. Let's break down the word sensitivity. Right, like the sensitivity of a controller when you're playing a game or a mouse. It means it reacts quickly. It feels a lot. That is positive and negative, right? And if you get curious about your sensitivity, that's really cool. Someone will say something, and you're like, well, I felt that. Why did I feel that? Instead of reacting, being like, mad, you made me feel that way. No one can make you feel any kind of way. You're feeling that way, and you choose to feel that way. So I thought that was a really interesting life lesson, right? Because I suffered a lot, not because I was feeling some kind of way, but rather because I would judge myself for feeling that way. Like, you understand this logically. You have no reason to feel this way. The next lesson is for all my self-help book enthusiasts, my podcast listeners. Don't get stuck in information gathering. All the information we are getting is run through a filter of bias. All the information we're getting that we're being transmitted is told for a reason to share a point. No one's just sharing out random statistics for no reason. They're giving you statistics that concrete their point, or lessons that work for them. And so even me, right? I'm giving you my lessons and my knowledge through my bias and my life experience. And you don't have my life, so it might not apply to you. And I think it's important to gather information because that's knowledge and that's acquiring knowledge. How do you turn knowledge into wisdom? Is blocking it off after, spending time in just your head to understand, okay, I've gathered my nuts like a squirrel gathers nuts. I've gathered my information. I've gathered that knowledge. Now I'm going to turn it into wisdom. I'm going to turn the information into knowledge by pondering it and seeing how it applies in my life and what beliefs and if it lines with my values. And then I turn to knowledge or wisdom by applying it. But don't get stuck in the trap of being obsessed with information gathering. And again, back to that productivity. You're not being productive because you're learning. Learn by doing, right? I have very, very limited post-secondary education. And I've learned a tremendous amount by making mistakes. And I've invested that money because I've lost it in those lessons. And I would choose that over university or college any day. I'm very, very happy with the way things worked out that way. I also found, I like to think of myself, again, as someone that's very confident. And a couple of times this year, because I taught myself to be curious instead of be triggered or activated, that there are holes in my confidence. Like, confidence is this armor that you build through success, through showing up and proving to yourself that you are what you say you are. And there's a couple things that came up that showed me, oh, there's holes in my armor. And so no matter how confident I thought I was, or anyone in this world thinks there are holes in your armor. And if you're aware of them, you can start to build back around them. So if you think you're really confident, next time someone like says something that's like boop, pokes you somewhere uncomfortable, be like, they shouldn't be able to poke me. Why is there a hole in my armor there? Right? Another lesson, most things are a symptom, not a cause. Right? If you want to talk about the problems in the world, a lot of them we're trying to look to solve symptoms the way that's like a big complaint with the medical system is like you're solving the symptom, not the cause. Same is true with politics, same is true in the world, same is true in relationships, right? um, Someone's giving you attitude, your partner's giving you attitude, that's a symptom, right? It's not the cause. They don't just choose to give you attitude one day. And when you treat everything as a symptom and find out where it comes from, it's much easier to like deal with what's real, because instead of just treating the symptom, it'll come up elsewhere. When you look at life as everything that bothers you or everything that's not working as a symptom, you dig for the cause, you'll find yourself to be much more productive and much more successful. A big other lesson this year, especially dealing with my health and my limited energy, was one, learning to say no and how to love people from afar and having boundaries. Um, there's a lot of people I really love and I would love to spend time with, and it's not my priority right now. And that's okay. And it's not on them. And they might be offended or insulted. And that's also just okay. It's okay. You get one life. Okay. Maybe not, but you can't be sure you don't get more than one. You really want to spend it not hanging out with people that you love, but don't necessarily add to your life right now, or you don't really enjoy being around right now. You can love them from afar. And every time you say no to something, you get to say yes to yourself. You get to say yes to something else. Like when you realize treat time as money, except you can always make more money. You can't unmake time. You start to be real picky about what you spend that time doing, right? Being mindful that rest is productive. Very important lesson. Rest is productive. Don't expect too much of yourself. Don't burn out. And so it's this fine balance, but learning to say no, learning to set boundaries, and loving people from afar, big, big lesson. Another one is that haters are the tax that you pay for success. Such a cliche in entrepreneur books, such a cliche in the business gurus. They talk about people really having malice towards you. And I was like, what? No, if you're just a good person, people might not see you, but they won't hope on your downfall. No, people are way more shitty than that. There are people that will feel entitled. They think they're better than you and you have what they deserve. And so they'll hate you for it. And it's so interesting because I think it's a human thing. I think it's a competition thing. But when you see it that way, it even being as sensitive as I am, like I look at people that have negative things to say about me as like I'm winning. Oh, I'm getting charged more tax because I'm making more. I got more haters because I'm doing better. Because with every hater, you also get fans. That's just the reality. You're just getting more eyes on you. Not everyone's gonna like you, and that's a really good way. Again, we talk about building that confidence armor to do that, right? Last couple lessons, I wrote down all these notes and I just think it's too much for one episode. So we're going to keep going a couple more and then get into one last lesson that I heard on TikTok because it's super cool. And I'll let you guys go and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Everything we do is a survival mechanism. Feeling sad, feeling angry, feeling triggered, feeling hungry, how we behave, crying, fawning, running. These were all survival mechanisms. Because until 100 years ago, like so much was different. Even the last 20 years, last 30 years, the internet, our baseline instincts haven't evolved for the world that we live in. And so like all these people with anxiety disorders, because like your body hasn't evolved to be in this environment yet. And when you start to understand, okay, you can't logic your way out of it, but you go, again, there's a guy I listen to who talks about, he works with patients in a therapeutic talk therapy as well as a few other things. When he goes, when they're having a panic attack, we're on the first floor. He goes, go jog, go run as fast as you can. 10 seconds, sprint, boom, gone. Right? Because your body gave you that anxiety to run. When you start to realize everything's a survival mechanism, you can kind of hack your way out of feeling these extreme emotions that are not productive. Last but not least, stop trying to change people's minds. I stopped trying to change people's minds. Most people don't want to accept the truth. They just want to be right. And that's okay. That's where they're at. You can't knock them for it. We've all been there, and we are all still there about some things. And they're not looking for logic or reason. And so, a lot of conversations that I thought would be productive, that I always argue, like, why can't we just have reasonable discourse? Why can't you just tell me why I'm wrong, or tell me why you believe what you believe, and why I believe what I believe? And it just doesn't happen in today's society. And I think most people just don't care or have the energy to know. They just believe what they believe, and it serves them. And again, comes back to that survival mechanism. Now, I want to finish this off. Something I saw on TikTok. There's a gentleman named, I hope I'm saying this right, Jesse Itzler. I don't know much about him, but I've seen him a lot on social media. People have shared stuff with me of his, like little clips of him talking. But something he said to me, not to me, I wish, something he said that I thought was so beautiful is he talks about a Japanese word called masogi. And it just basically means, and this is me repeating what he said, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it means something totally different. But it's a big thing that defined that year. And if you lived to 60 and you did one thing a year from the age 20 on, that's 40 big things. It's not that much. Every year we decorate the Christmas tree with my folks. I like go back to theirs, and we buy an ornament for what that year represent, what happened to you that year, or what was a big accomplishment. And there's some ones that are really obvious, like you got your driver's license, or you got you a car ornament. And there's also years where it's just like, I don't know, we didn't know what to get you because you didn't do all that much, especially when you're a kid, right? But as an adult, all my ornaments I can look at, I'm like, oh, that year I went and trained in the Philippines. That year I fought in Thailand. That year I was living in Costa Rica. That year I was, I started a business that year, right? So doing something you wouldn't normally do once a year, and you live to 60 and you start doing it now, you maybe get 30 new things. Now, he talks about one of his best friends. They went and climbed a mountain together. He's like, how often do you do stuff like this? This is so cool. Um, and he laughs and he goes, it's funny you say that, because he goes, every second month, every other month, so not like January, February, I'll do it, and then I won't do it till April. He'll do something he wouldn't normally do, right? And if you start that now, you start that every second month you do something you wouldn't normally do, and you live another 40 years, that's 240 memories and things that you've done that would never have been there if you didn't start that. I think that's a really cool thing to be like, I want to do that this year. I want to do 6 things I never would have thought I would do, to create memories and habits, and learn more about life and gather more information. And the last thing he said, this is the formula for winning at life, is every quarter, so every season, he adds a healthy habit. As a coach that works in health and wellness, some performance athletes are really good at adding specific things like training, while other things are really difficult, like the things that we all think we should be doing: reading, meditating, walking, stop scrolling. And he talks about doing one good life-changing habit every quarter. So that can be like 10 minutes of reading, easy bite-sized things that you do. A quarter is like 60 some days. Do it, and then you can choose to abandon it or keep it if it's serving you. And I think that's a really good way to win at life, to create the life you love. And the perfect finishing kind of thought for the very last episode of the Art of Life podcast. And as always, a quote from James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits. He has, I'm not sponsored, but he has an amazing newsletter. I don't get excited about stuff I subscribe to. I get excited about this newsletter. He puts out like 3 thoughts by myself, 2 by others, and a question for you. 3, 2, 1 email. He sends it once a week. Absolutely brilliant. And this quote is from that email. You have to work hard to discover how to work smart. You won't know the best solutions until you've made nearly all the mistakes. And with that, Art Family, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. I look forward to catching you on the Koi Fish Profit podcast. And let me know things you want to hear me talk about next year. If you want to see more guests, your feedback is always very, very appreciated. Make sure you follow the social media. Make sure it'll be in the notes, because I haven't actually changed the social media yet, but I'm really hoping I get the name I want. Regardless, it'll be something along the lines of KFP Podcast or Koi Fish Profit Podcast. And download the episode. That really helps. Share it with a friend. Really want to grow this thing next year, put a little bit more effort into it, because I think the world needs this right now. Happy New Year. I love you all. And until next time, cheers.